Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome in to Sports Daily here on KFH. I'm Tommy Castor. Jacob Albracht out today in his spot. The one and only Paul Savage joining us on the program. Jad Chambers producing the show. Your calls all morning long at 869-1240. We got a jam-packed show for you today. We'll get into all of that in just a couple of minutes from now. But Paul Savage, how are you today, my friend?
I'm good. How you doing? You doing all right?
I'm good. I'm glad it's Friday. It's been a long and busy week. And I feel like we're finally there. We're knocking on the doorstep to a big championship weekend in college football, a primetime game for the Kansas City Chiefs. We've got KU basketball, a big-time matchup with the last two defending national championship teams tonight. There's just a lot going on, man.
Boy, this is a great time to be a sports fan. And if college football isn't your bag, I mean, pro football's got to be your bag. The NBA's going. College basketball's going. I mean, what better time of the year than right now, my friend?
I can't think of one. We've got that crossover.
This is
that crossover between football and basketball.
This is it.
The conference championships in college football. We're getting down to the home stretch in the NFL regular season. And then you mentioned college basketball. We had the Shockers play the other night. They're looking great.
Looking
KU
good.
and K-State in action. I'm telling you, like it's an exciting time. And, you and I were texting back and forth this morning, kind of figuring out a breakdown for today's show. And I basically told you, I'm like, we're jam-packed.
I
We
know.
got so much going on.
We have so much to talk about, so much that we would add absolutely the banner between you and I, and then we get our listeners to chime in, and man, oh man, we can't get to some of these topics. We're going to, we need an extra hour. What do you say? Let's talk to Tony. Let's see if we can go from 11 to 12. What do you say?
Yeah, I don't know if Jim Rome fans would really be happy about that.
Okay, good point.
We're gonna have to, we're gonna have to cram it all in 2 hours.
Right.
I didn't even mention we've got Wyatt Thompson, the voice of the Wildcats, coming up in the next segment. We'll talk to him at around 9:15, and then of course our Friday football picks in the next hour. We will do that as well. Let's get things started here on the program today with a recap of Thursday night football. It was a high-scoring game last night inside AT&T Stadium as the Cowboys pull away from the Seahawks 41-35. Not only was it a high-scoring game, Paul, penalties, I felt like the referees were talking more than the broadcasters were in the game last night. But the Cowboys, they win at home again. They've got a really, really long home winning streak right now. And man, I'll tell you what, I know the defense really didn't hold the Seahawks down, but they made the plays when it mattered. And the Cowboys, they look really legit.
Well, they do. But wait a second, before we start talking about really legit, I mean, now the Seahawks are a good football team. I think the Seahawks are a good average NFL football team. But the Dallas Cowboys could have lost this game, and probably you could make a case should have lost this game. That you had a split personality football team. I thought the defensive backs made some really good plays when they had to, but they had some busted coverages as well. The defensive line at times put really good pressure on the quarterback, but at times they didn't. I mean, this was like a split image of a Dallas Cowboys, the good side, the bad side, you saw it all. But they came out with a win, 41-35. I mean, it was a sloppy win. But in the NFL, you take wins. That's what you do. You win, and that's when you advance and go the next week. But Cowboys could have lost this game. I mean, it told me one thing, that even though the Seahawks are a good football team, they're an average football team, it told me that when you look at the Seahawks almost beating the Dallas Cowboys, I don't know that the Dallas Cowboys, we fit them in that top 3, 4, 5. Maybe they're just outside that. I don't know. But, you certainly got to think that there's other teams like the Eagles, the Chiefs, pick your next of the 49ers. They might be in that. And then you can pick several people will have different picks for maybe 4 and 5, but I'm not so sure that the Dallas Cowboys, in my book, the way they played, that's one game. I mean, it's one game, but you're at home, but it's one game. And I looked at it as, they showed some really great things, but they also didn't. And the inconsistency as a football coach, inconsistency drives you crazy. It drives me crazy. And I know it's got to be
Right.
driving that staff crazy, but it was a fun game to
Well,
watch. It was entertaining, wasn't it? It was entertaining.
Back
and forth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what
and
it was.
That hasn't been the case for Thursday night games throughout the course of the last couple of seasons. But that was an entertaining game. And one of the criticisms of the Cowboys has been that they haven't beaten anybody, right? And I think that I don't want to say that they put that to bed after the game last night, because the Seahawks have fallen off a little bit. I mean, let's be honest about that. But still, that was a more marquee win that the Cowboys have had probably than any other win all season. They look to continue that and that 14-game home winning streak next week against the Eagles in primetime. The Eagles play the Niners this week. We're going to pick that game in our Friday football picks. But my question to you, Paul, is Dak Prescott the presumptive MVP in the National Football League right now? I mean, man, he's looked good the last several weeks, threw for 3 touchdown passes. The guy has done quite a bit over the last, month and a half or so. Is he your pick right now for the MVP?
Well, I guess we've got to look. We still got 6 or 7 games still left to go. I mean, there's still a lot of football to play, and so there's going to be a lot of things happen. I guess you got to keep him in the mix. I think it's too early for that. I know that, I think a lot of people would say Jalen Hurts isn't he still probably the favorite at this point?
Yeah, Jalen Hurts, Tua is probably up there.
Yeah.
I've heard Brock Purdy rumblings a little bit.
Well, that's not going to happen. That you may hear rumblings, but that's not going to happen. But you also look at Patrick Mahomes, and they're although he's not having a caliber year of MVP like he's had before, but here's the problem with Patrick Mahomes: our expectations are so high. I mean, we expect him to walk on water as he walks onto the field almost, and that's not the case this year. He's a mere mortal this year. A darn good mere mortal, but a mere mortal indeed. So is Prescott up there? Yeah, he's up there. We got to consider it.
Yeah.
He's on the board. We'll put it this way. He's on the MVP board. We've got our eye on him, but he is not it at this point.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I think he is. I think he is the presumptive MVP right now. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't think there's a quarterback playing better right now than Dak Prescott. I think you could maybe say CJ Stroud over the last few weeks has played at the level of Dak. I don't think that as great as CJ Stroud is, I don't think that they're going to give a rookie the MVP unless they blow you away. So I think it's Dak. Yeah. And especially after last night with what we saw against the Seahawks and the way that, the guy threw for 3 touchdowns. He had a couple of phenomenal throws, a couple of really good runs as well. And the biggest thing, Paul, I'll tell you right now, he's not turning the ball over. He's not turning the ball over like what we've been accustomed to seeing Dak Prescott do.
Right.
And I think that puts him over the edge. And if he's able to beat the Eagles, their arch rivals, a week from Sunday on Sunday Night Football, man, at that point, I think you go ahead and give him the MVP right now.
What if I was to tell you Geno Smith had more yards passing than Dak Prescott last night? What would
Did the Seahawks win the game?
Okay, touche. All right. That's, you always got to have a comeback, don't you? Just always
not taking anything away from the Seahawks. I thought Geno Smith played well. DK Metcalf was incredible. It was great. It was such a fun game to watch. Offense was on display. I would have preferred a few less penalties, but it is what it is.
Right.
It was an entertaining game to watch for sure, and the Cowboys get the win 41-35. We're going to take our first break of the program. When we come back on the other side, Wyatt Thompson, the voice of the Kansas State Wildcats, will join us. Tommy Castor, Paul Savage, Jad Chambers. It's a Friday on Sports Daily. We'll be right back.
I haven't got all day.
869-1240.
Time to get busy.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
Your new radio home for K-State Athletics, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. It's that time, Sports Daily, getting all the inside information on Kansas State. Let's go now to the voice of the Wildcats, Wyatt Thompson.
Okay, welcome back in, everybody. It's Sports Daily on a Friday here on KFH. Tommy Castor along with Paul Savage, and joined on the IHOP hotline by Wyatt Thompson, the voice of the Kansas State Wildcats. Wyatt, it's a busy time, obviously. Of course, we don't have to worry about a football game here for a little bit for the Wildcats. We'll talk about the bowl game potential in just a minute. But first off, how you doing, Wyatt?
Well, I'm doing well. Good to be on with you guys again. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Everything good on your end?
Yeah, we did. It was a good Thanksgiving, fun to watch. I guess Snowmageddon over the weekend for Kansas State. I know the outcome wasn't what Wildcat fans wanted, but definitely an entertaining game. Fun to watch a game in the snow, that's for sure. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. But first, Wyatt, I want to get into basically the big news of the week, and that's the transfer portal, and that's Will Howard announcing that he's transferring out of the Wildcat program for his final year of eligibility. This is something that we've covered quite a bit over the week here on the program. Want to get your thoughts on it, and just number one, the legacy that you think Will Howard has brought to the Wildcat program, and what you think his value is on the market when he goes somewhere else for his final year of eligibility.
I appreciate you asking. It's a very interesting subject, isn't it? From so many different angles. I guess I would start with probably just what Will has gone through and accomplished in his time at K-State. I think everybody is aware that he was forced to the field very early in his career as a freshman, had his struggles, and I've said this before and I'll say it again. I love the way he handled himself and that particular situation. I think it made him stronger. I have always appreciated his work ethic and all of the work that he puts into his craft. I think he's a very smart young man. I think he's a very smart football player. And I think over the course of time, when given the opportunity, he just got better and better and better. And then all of a sudden, K-State's in the limelight, winning a Big 12 championship last year. He was never perfect. I think we all understand that. So in terms of his legacy, you know what? If I'm being honest, I've been here for 22 years, and in that time, K-State has won 3 Big 12 championships, and I think he will be looked at as well as most of the guys that have won titles here. I just think that is so. Whether that's, name the guys. I mean, it's just what it is.
Right.
And as far as the portal goes, my opinion on that is I'm really truly disappointed by it. I was, if I'm being honest, I didn't really even think about the fact that may play out this way, but that's on me, because my understanding now in retrospect that as a graduate, he could go in as early as this past Monday, and that's what he did. And I think he will be a highly sought after player with that kind of experience and that kind of track record. I've seen a couple of lists and there's so many guys in the portal already that way with quarterbacks, but he's right towards the top of the list.
Yeah, and I think that when we're talking about his legacy, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, I think that he should be viewed as one of the best to do it, at least in the last couple decades for the Wildcats, but it is a little complicated. I mean, you mentioned that it was never perfect for Will Howard. And, I talked about it earlier this week that, he, until this season, he was never really the guy for the Wildcats, right? Like it was Skylar Thompson and it was Adrian Martinez a year ago. And even this year, everybody was sort of clamoring for Avery Johnson. So it was never really his, but you look at his accomplishments and, leading the all-time list of touchdowns, won a Big 12 championship, led them to a Sugar Bowl appearance. I wonder if, and I know legacy is a complicated thing, but I wonder if he will be truly appreciated by Wildcat fans, or if, the thought is, well, it's more complicated than anything else, but really the stats speak for themselves.
Well, you said a lot there, and I agree with most all of that. I think I would probably say that if I were going to disagree with anything that you just said, I would say it was probably his team late last year. But other than that, I think you're right on target, and that does make him different, doesn't it? I mean, that's the truth. And I don't think you can mask that. So yeah, his legacy, it will be interesting. Who knows what the way people will look at him 5 years and 10 years down the road, but I don't know that you can undervalue his meaning to this football program over the last couple of 2 or 3 years. He's just been a model player and teammate. And again, I can't stress enough, how he made K-State football better with his work ethic, working with those receivers and everybody. I mean, he was clearly, as coach, and in Coach Kleiman's words, he was the face of the program this year. There's no doubt about that.
Paul Savage here, White. It's always good to talk to you, my friend. And we've been doing this a lot of years at several different stations, but that's all right. But here's the thing that I want to ask you, and we'll get off this. I don't want to beat this subject to death, but I'm just going to ask you a blunt question, and it has to do with K-State and how they're handling the portal and NIL and all that. Is Will Howard making the move because of money? I read an article online. It might have been Fox Sports or maybe it was ESPN. I don't know where I read it. I can't remember. But anyway, I read an article that a really good quarterback going into the portal late in his career is averaging somewhere between $1 and $2 million a year wherever they land. And, Notre Dame has had that effect with Sam Hartman and, those kind of things. Is this a money deal? Is in the long run, K-State going to be able to keep up and fight the battles of NIL and keep these guys? Is this a money deal with him, or he looks and says, well, I'm graduated. I've given them all these years. I've been here for 4 years. I've graduated. And now it's time to go make some real money. Is this what that's about, do you think?
Well, I think you can look at it a couple of different ways, Paul. And I think your points are good ones, right? And let's just kind of say for what it is, because I mentioned, he has graduated with his degree,
right?
Which makes him a grad transfer, which is why he went into the portal on Monday. And I believe he is going to make a good amount of money. Is it all about money? I wouldn't say it's 100% necessarily, but it is a large part of it.
Yeah.
When you're that young, and you have an opportunity to make that kind of money for a 1-year commitment, I have a hard time blaming him for doing that.
Right.
Now, on the other hand, I wouldn't say it's 100% that, because as I said a moment ago, I think Will's a very bright guy, and I think he's a very bright football player. I think at his core, he certainly knows that this is probably on the verge of Avery Johnson's time and team. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I believe it.
I think he knows that.
I believe you're right.
I really, truly do.
Right.
I mean, you guys mentioned it a moment ago. We know what Avery is and what he has the potential to be.
Right.
So if I'm putting percentages on it, it's probably going to be about 90% a decision for himself and his family and to take care of himself. And again, I have not and will not hold that against him. Would I have wanted to see him stay and play in the bowl game and those kind of things? Absolutely. But that's not the way this thing is structured. If I'm being honest, it's just not. If he stayed another 30 days or so to play in that bowl game, it could cost him quite a bit of money.
Yes, it could. Yes.
It's just what it is.
Yeah. Tommy, go ahead.
Yep. Wyatt Thompson, voice of the Wildcats, joining us here on Sports Daily. And Wyatt, it wasn't just Will Howard, Jake Rubley, Adrian Lara, leaving basically Avery Johnson is the sole quarterback on the roster. And he'll be the quarterback, not only for the bowl game, but the quarterback of the future for the Wildcats. And I wonder, and I know that we've been spending a lot of time on the portal and the future and all of that, but I wonder when it relates to Avery Johnson, Wyatt, how much of this was maybe telegraphed a little bit from the way the season has played out? Because I think about it from Avery's perspective. If I'm Avery Johnson and I know that Will Howard is coming back potentially next season, and I know that I've burned through my red shirt, then at what point, if I'm Avery Johnson, do I decide, well, maybe I need to go elsewhere? So clearly, the future of the program is his, and it's his team. So I wonder what your thoughts are on the way that Avery has went through this season, what the team looks like with him under center, not only for the bowl game, but in the future. And then I know I'm adding a bunch of questions here on you, but what the future behind Avery at quarterback might look like.
Well, there's a lot of stuff to digest.
Yeah.
Let's start with Avery's season. You're right. They did burn the red shirt, and there are people that are probably until the end of time going to argue whether that was the right thing or the wrong thing, or whether the team should have, been his this past season, or for a good portion of that. I'm sure you guys would agree with that. I mean, we hear all of that, right?
Absolutely.
I think Avery has handled this about as well as you can, because and I mean that sincerely, because I really like him as a person, and I don't know him as well as I know Will Howard yet, and I hope I get to be honest. But we all see the skill set and are wowed by it. I mean, everybody, coaches included, and I think he has a chance to be one of the more special players to have played here over the course of time, if he stays healthy and works all of that out. But it's kind of one of those things where he was caught in somewhat of a tough situation too, but nobody talked that much about it. but I think he handled it in an exemplary manner. And I think for me personally, I would say that I think the coach has had a little bit of a difficult time from the standpoint of you have a quarterback who just led you to a Big 12 title, and you're going to turn away from that and start a true freshman.
Right.
That probably isn't going to be done anywhere. I'm just being blunt about that. People will disagree with that, and I respect that. But that's just how I believe the coaches would probably have looked at it. Now, trying to tackle some of the other stuff, in terms of who would be the backup for the bowl, that is a really difficult question to answer from this perspective, because you mentioned Adrian Laura is now gone, Jake Rubley is gone. And I think, if I'm being honest, I think Coach Kleiman expected both of those guys to do what they've done. It's hard because they've spent some time developing those young guys, but they want to play, and I respect that too. You have a situation here where I've been led to believe that K-State will probably try for a special waiver on Jacob Knuth. Whether they get it or not is you could argue that all day long. If that doesn't happen, then it gets a little bit dicey. Do you run Wildcat? We've got a kid on our team from Grand Junction, Colorado, Max Marsh, who played some quarterback in high school, and there are a couple other guys. So, but hopefully it can be Avery's game and just let him settle in, and then you get into next season with him being the guy. I don't know if I covered all of those questions. Did I get most of them?
You did. Yeah, you
Jeez,
did.
well, count
Go ahead,
2 or
Paul.
3 of those on my account right there, for guys' sakes. All right. Well, anyway, Wyatt, you're the man that's on the inside of this thing, and we all know if you're ever around a press box at K-State, there's always bowl representatives. It seems like somewhere in the house, always. And bowls always tip their hand. They let you know if they're really interested or not. And where's the wind blowing on a bowl for this team? What is Wyatt Thompson's gut feeling when he looks at the bowl situation? You know how bad some of these bowls want K-State. Where does K-State end up? Now, I'm not holding you to it, by the way. I'm just saying, what do you think? Where's looking like a good chance that we could end up at?
Well, I think there are probably 4 or 5 possibilities, but I think there are 3 that are better than others.
Okay.
And I don't know how you guys look at this. I have said this in other interviews, and I'll say it here too. I do think that probably under the current circumstances, and again, we'll know on Sunday, we don't know now just based on, will Texas make the Final Four? Doubtful, but possible. And then, the scenarios that go from the top down in terms of the picking, in the pecking order, if you will. But what I've been hearing is that the Pop-Tarts Bowl is interested in K-State, and that is a legitimate quality possibility, and that's Orlando, Florida. K-State's never played a bowl game in the state of Florida. I think they would love to do that. I think the fans would be excited about it. I think another real good option will be the Texas Bowl in Houston. We've been there before. It's a terrific venue, at least from my perspective. I think Arizona would be on the table. Those would probably be the top 3, at least from kind of what I'm hearing. Then I would also say that, depending on other things, because here's the deal that you have to look at. I think these bowls are always interested in teams that travel, and K-State does that, Paul.
Right,
I think that's kind of what you're referencing there.
Right.
So, but I think, if I'm being honest, I think KU would travel because they're excited about what they're doing. I think OSU would travel, certainly. Iowa State fans have proven they would. So, there's a lot of things there. And if you look at the standings, it's kind of a jumbled mess after K-State's loss last Saturday night. So those top 3, I think, will kind of remain the same going into Sunday. And I will say this: I could be dead wrong, but I think it's either Pop-Tarts or the Texas Bowl in Houston.
All right. Well, we'll find out for sure in a couple of days from now. One more football question for you, Wyatt, before we move on to basketball really quickly. So let's go back to last Saturday, Farmageddon against Iowa State. Now that we know what's happening with the transfer portal and Will Howard leaving and Trayshawn Ward also entering the transfer portal and all of that, and then you add in the conditions from what Kansas State faced weather-wise against Iowa State. As you're leading into whatever bowl game it is, do you just throw that film out from Saturday night because of the weather and because of the conditions and because of the fact that your roster looks a lot different? Or are there things that you think the Wildcats can take away from that game against Iowa State into their bowl game?
I think probably the latter is the best answer, because I can tell you with a complete certainty how frustrated Chris Kleiman was after that game. In the 5 years I've known Coach, that was probably as disappointed, frustrating, and upset as I've seen him. And I mean that sincerely, that he was not happy in any way, shape, or form with what happened in that game defensively. It's still astonishing to me to think about the game, and here we are almost a week later, because I've said this in other interviews too. This is crazy when you think about it, but those 6 scoring plays covered 402 yards, and their other 26 plays covered 89 yards. I can't make sense of that. I don't know if you guys can either.
No,
it's just mind-boggling. But you've got to go back and study it and look at it, because it wasn't just the long runs by Abu Sama, who was really good, but there were shock plays in the pass game too. I just think it was one of those, and again, I just throwing all of this out here. I think it was weather related, sure. Poor tackling, poor effort, some of those types of things, angles, all of that is on the table here. And I don't want to take anything away from Iowa State in any way. I thought they played a very, very fine game. I said going in, I thought their quarterback was playing at a really good level, and I thought he handled the ball game and managed it about as well as you could, much like Will. I thought Will, in those elements, threw the ball around pretty good. I mean, the conditions were bad, right? I mean, I've only seen 2 games in my life that I've called that I would say that were probably more impactful snow-wise than that one. And that says a lot. That was, I mean, it was 6.8 inches of snow falling, man. It was a lot. So it was a crazy game. Yeah.
Talking to Wyatt Thompson, voice of the Wildcats here on Sports Daily. Wyatt, let's shift gears to basketball. A pretty fun stretch of time coming up for the Wildcats. They've got North Alabama tomorrow, but then a top 25 matchup against Villanova on Tuesday. This is a Wildcats team, Wyatt, that it took overtime to beat Oral Roberts on Tuesday night. And hearing Coach Tang talk after the game, it seemed like the key word from him was consistency, trying to develop some consistency with this team. And depending on who you're talking about, whether it's, Tyler Perry not really doing much in the first half, but then playing well in the second half, Cam Carter kind of the other way around. Where do you stand on where things are at with the Wildcats, and what are they going to need to do on Tuesday night when they play Villanova to be able to get a win?
Those are all interesting questions for me, because I think it would be the simplest thing for me to say there were 2 factors that Coach Tang was not happy about with the game against Oral Roberts. One was their defensive effort and performance, and 2 was the way they played in the last 5 minutes of regulation. Now, they made up for it by dominating the game in the overtime session, but in the last 4 or 5 minutes, they turned it over, I think he said 4 times, and you can't under any circumstances be happy with that. I think the word consistency that you used is kind of what needs to be said here, because they're far from where they want to be as a defensive team. With that said, I do think there are some things that they are continuing to improve at in a pretty big way. One would be offensively, they've become pretty solid, especially when you think about the last 3 games and what Arthur Kaluma has done. I mean, he's had 20 the last couple of games, and he just seems to be playing at a little more free and easy pace, and he's such a good athlete, and he gets to the rim, he shoots it a little bit. But, I think we could probably talk about TP's game all day long, Tyler Perry, because you're right. He didn't score in the first half, and then I don't think K-State wins the game without him in the second half and in the overtime. The Kaluma 3 in the overtime and the 4-point play by Tyler was really the whole thing. But the other thing that I would add is I think this team has really done a nice job of rebounding, in particular on the offensive end. I'm excited about that, because you guys know this, that rebounding for them last year was difficult at times. And it's been a real major focus this time around. So I'm excited about that part. And then the other thing I'm excited about is what the freshmen are doing. And probably I would throw Will McNair in there a little bit too. I don't know that anybody saw Will McNair being a starter, a month ago or so, or a month and a half ago. He's done a nice job. But those freshmen excite me in a big way. I really, really, really like Day-Day Ames and his toughness and his ability to play the game. The toughness part with his ability is a pretty good combo right now. And we haven't seen the best of RJ shooting it yet, but I think that's coming. And then I think in time, Caleb Buddy Rich is going to be a really good player here. I just do.
I'm going to ask you a question about Wichita State, because on the 21st of December, KU and K-State, K-State and Wichita State get together and they're going to play a basketball game in Kansas City. But, I'm just asking you as a person who loves basketball, loves K-State, loves the state of Kansas, how much would you like to see Kansas State and Wichita State play, home and home every other year? You play at Manhattan one year, play at Wichita State the next year, and back and forth, and kind of make that a tradition. How much would you, Wyatt Thompson, as a fan, like to see that happen?
Well, I'm in.
Attaboy.
You described it well, because that's kind of what this has become. I mean, my understanding, I hope I get this right, but I think it was a 4-game series when the contract was signed. And I do think it's good, they've got maybe what adds to it here a little bit, Paul, is that you have Jerome Tang and Paul Mills, who go back and have a little bit of history together, right? And that can't hurt either.
Yeah, right.
I haven't seen a lot of the Shockers yet, but the little bits that I've seen, I think he's doing a good job. And I'm anxious to get to that game and see what that's like. But there's so many fans in the state that, for years, these 3 programs in this state, the Division I programs, have been basketball schools. And I think to a degree, it's always going to be like that. So why not? I don't see any downside to it. If being honest, when K-State when I first got here with Coach Woldridge, and they weren't quite like what they are now, maybe there was more on the line of downside, but not now. I just don't see it as much now. I just don't.
Real quick.
One more
let me
go ahead, Paul.
Just one
real
ahead. Quick thing. The one thing I'll say about the Shockers this year, what's going to be so much fun for you to broadcast, is that they're getting better. There's a basketball team that was not playing well at the first of the year. They're playing better now. You're gonna have a great night of fun broadcasting that game. Wyatt, Tommy, I'm sorry, I just had to throw that in for my buddy
you're good.
Wyatt. That's all. Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right,
no worries. One more for you, Wyatt, before we let you go here on the program.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Arthur Kaluma in the game against Oral Roberts. He came off the bench, and I'm wondering if guy a starting 5 guy, or if Coach Tang likes him coming off the bench to provide that spark.
Well, honestly, I think what you'll see, he's probably going to be a starter more times than not. I think, if I'm being honest here, and I always try to do that, I think Coach Tang has really worked hard with Arthur because he sees all of the upside. And a few games ago, you heard somebody ask in his press conference about Arthur Kaluma, and what do you want to see out of him? And remember what he said? I want him to buy in.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what that says to you, but for me, knowing Coach Tang like I do, and what his expectations are, that's all across the board with Arthur. I'm not saying he's done anything wrong at all, but I think he sees the upside of this young man and what he is capable of, and his ceiling is very, very high. And I think sometimes those kind of things happen to maybe, kind of push him and get him better, frankly. And that's like, I don't know if I'd add any more to that or not. It's just kind of what it is. I think he sees a great talent and lots and lots of potential, and wants him to get there.
Well, the next couple of games for the Wildcats inside Bramlage tomorrow, taking on North Alabama, a 1:00 tip. And then we mentioned it before, Villanova comes to town, the number 18 team in the country inside Bramlage. And I'm sure that's going to be a lot of fun to broadcast wide. I'm sure you're looking forward to that.
Very much so. Villanova's very, very good. I know they lost at home to St. Joe's the other night, but they made a lot of threes to beat a pretty good Villanova team. And I think that's so exciting for the fans. You talked about playing Wichita State, but you bring in a team like that with a name like that, a team that's won national championships here recently. That's all good, man, right? I mean, that's good for us and good for them too. I'm excited about both of those games, but in particular the Villanova game for sure.
Yep, it's a 6:00 tip, and you'll be able to hear it right here on KFH with Wyatt Thompson. Wyatt, thank you so much for being on the program, and have a great call tomorrow and Tuesday.
Well, thanks, guys. Great talking to you. Take care.
There goes Wyatt Thompson, the voice of the Wildcats here on Sports Daily. Always appreciate and enjoy his time and his input on both football and basketball. And, of course, we'll have to wait until this weekend to get a solid idea to know exactly where the Wildcats are playing in their bowl game later this month. We're going to step aside for another break. When we come back, we'll preview another big college basketball game tonight inside Allen Fieldhouse, the Jayhawks and UConn, the defending national champions. That's tonight. We'll preview it next on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back, everybody. This Friday edition of Sports Daily on KFH. Tommy Castor and Paul Savage in for Jacob Albracht today. Jad Chambers is producing the program. Our thanks to Wyatt Thompson, the voice of the Wildcats. If you missed any of that, you can always go back and listen to it on the free Odyssey app. Thanks to our video stream viewers as well. Of course, you can always watch the program on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitch. And the IHOP hotline is now open the rest of the way at 869-1240. Paul, a couple of minutes before we get into hour number 2 and our Friday football picks of the weekend. So I want to take a couple of minutes and focus on the matchup tonight inside Allen Fieldhouse. You've got the Jayhawks, you've got UConn. UConn won the national championship a year ago. Of course, the Jayhawks won it 2 years ago. This is a huge, high-profile college basketball matchup inside Allen Fieldhouse. And, you know, the Jayhawks had a little bit of trouble earlier this week against Eastern Illinois. They were like 38.5-point favorites. They only won by 8. Any thoughts on this game and what the Jayhawks are going to have to do to beat UConn tonight?
Right. They have the attention of the University of Kansas. There's no question that UConn has done that. Having watched part of a good chunk of the interview with Bill Self earlier in the week with regards to this matchup, I can't remember a time where I've watched Bill Snyder pay more respect, be more humble, be more complimentary of a basketball team than he is of UConn. And I think that says something about what he thinks the potential of this game could be. He's showing them respect. You know, there's not going to be any bulletin board, things or anything like that. And the fact that this has Bill Snyder's attention, Bill Self's attention more than any time I've seen in a long, long time. It tells me something. And this is going to be a whale of a game. But I think because of Bill Self and his mindset, that he's trying to get something across to his team with the way he's acting and talking about UConn. And that is, guys, if you don't focus, if you don't play hard, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, if you don't do what we coach you to do, if you don't follow the game plan, you're not going to win this game. And you know something? He's right. UConn's a good basketball team.
Well, they're a great basketball team. They're the defending national champions. And Dan Hurley
that's right.
Dan Hurley's a phenomenal coach. And, you know, I think that part of the reason why there isn't any added additional bulletin board material is because I think all the bulletin board material is the way that Kansas played on Tuesday night against Eastern Illinois. They cannot have that kind of effort tonight and expect to win. They've got to rebound the ball better. Shot creation has got to get better. DeJuan Harris has got to take some shots. They're leaning on Hunter Dickinson, and I get that because he's phenomenal.
Well, he is.
But you've got to have other avenues to score the basketball. Kevin McCullough is great too, but you got to have shot creation elsewhere. Right now, if you're going to bet this game, Kansas is about 2.5 3-point favorites in this game. And I think that's solely because of the fact that it's inside Allen Fieldhouse.
That makes a difference.
Basically why.
That's right. That's right.
So that game is tonight. It's a late tip at 8:00 inside Allen Fieldhouse. And I think you're right, Paul. It's going to be a whale of a game tonight between the Jayhawks and the Huskies. All right, we're going to take our final break of hour number 1. When we come back, our Friday football picks. I've got Jacob's picks. We'll be able to tell you about those. Paul and I will pick the big conference championship football games this weekend in college football, and then 5 NFL games. That will be coming up at the top of next hour. It's Sports Daily on KFH. We'll be right back.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Hey, sports bettors, ready for some picks destined to fail? It's time to hear what the Sports Daily staff thinks of the weekend games.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Hour number 2 of Sports Daily underway here on KFH. I'm Tommy Castor, along with Paul Savage. Jacob Albracht out today, but we do have his picks for Friday football picks, and Jad Chambers is producing the show. Let's go back to a week ago, Paul. It was a weird one. We had 2 games that pushed. So then that has not happened so far this season. The Mississippi and Mississippi State game pushed. And then the other push was the Bills and the Eagles, that overtime win for Philadelphia. So the way that things stand right now, you had a really good week. You were 6-2-2. Jacob was 4-4-2. I did not have a good week at 2-6-2. So you and Jacob, you're tied for the lead.
Tied for the lead.
Tied for the lead. You and Jacob right now tied for the lead.
And Tommy where he is supposed to be. Oh, that was horrible. Wow. Okay. I apologize. That was Jad. That was uncalled for, wasn't it? Quit laughing, Jad. Jad's laughing.
Look, I had a couple of really good weeks. In fact, I had a really good month. And
no, you did. You did. Man,
last week was not good. I had gotten it back over 500, and now I'm 3 games under. Both you and Jacob are now 9 games over 500. I'm 3 games under. So you guys have a 6-game lead on me. And we're running out of weeks here. I mean, we're gonna have bowl season. We're gonna have we've got a few more NFL weeks to go, but I'm running out of time to make up ground. So I gotta do really good here this weekend. So hopefully we can do that. Jad, let's go ahead and hit the music, and we will get into our picks for the weekend. Our college football games, of course, they are the 5 big conference championship games, and we're gonna start with the game tonight. In the Pac-12, it's the final Pac-12 conference championship game inside Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. It's the rematch, Washington and Oregon. Washington, the Huskies, they are 10-point underdogs. What do you think about this, Paul? Do you think that Oregon can beat them by 10, or do the Huskies have a chance to cover this number?
Well, these are both really good football teams, and Washington has a Heisman contender. Well, so does Oregon. In fact, their Oregon's contender might be even a little ahead of the kid out of Washington. But Washington is not near as good as Oregon, and I think the numbers show that. It's a plus 10.
They beat them earlier this year. Washington beat Oregon.
I know, but it wouldn't happen again today because both these teams have kind of gone in different directions. I think Washington, while they're still good, they're playing not as well as Oregon. I think Oregon beats them by a bunch. I won't be surprised. 21, 24 points. 10 points isn't even close enough. I could even make a prediction, and I've done this on occasions, been right, been wrong. Oregon covers by half. I'm taking Oregon.
By half?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
By half.
I don't know if I've ever seen a conference championship game be so in favor and skewed towards one team when that team lost to the team they're playing against in the conference championship game just a few weeks ago. That's what's happening for the game tonight. I don't know why. I know Oregon is really good. I like Dan Lanning a lot, but I don't get why all of a sudden Washington, everybody thinks they're dead in the water. Washington won. They beat them earlier this season. I'm going to take the Huskies plus 10.
Attaboy.
If you're giving me 10 points for Washington, I'm going to take that all day long.
Thank you.
Oregon may very well win the game, but I'm not sure that they're going to win by more than a touchdown. So I'm going to say Washington plus 10.
How in the world could we look at a game so totally opposite? I don't get it, but it's our prerogative, but man, oh man, I'm really comfortable with this. I really like this a lot.
Michael Penix Jr. is not going to win the Heisman. It's probably going to be Jaden Daniels out of LSU. But Bo Nix is right there too.
But he would be the runner-up. Bo Nixon would be the runner-up.
Bo Nix is great, and Oregon is fantastic.
That's right.
I just don't get all the hate on Washington when the Huskies beat Oregon earlier this season. I don't understand that. Jacob's with me. So, Paul, you've got an island for Oregon.
Thank you.
At minus 10. You get the very first island of the weekend. Jacob is taking.
What an island.
Yeah. He's taking Washington plus 10 as well. Let's go on to the Big 12 championship game tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. kick inside AT&T Stadium in Arlington. The Longhorns, Paul, are favored by 15.5 points Do you like that, or do you think the Cowboys can cover?
Well, I think not only can the Cowboys cover, they can also win. And let me just tell you, I'm going to make this bet.
Really?
You can probably guess where I'm going on this thing. I so much want Texas and Oklahoma to leave this conference and not win a championship in the Big 12 in football on their way out the door. That would be my wish come true. I want Oklahoma State to win so bad. It's emotional for me. I'm throwing out all the stats, everything I believe, everything that I know about these two teams. I'm throwing it out because I don't want Texas walking away with a Big 12 championship on the last year before they leave. I'm taking Oklahoma State on principle.
Okay. We'll see how that works out for you, because I don't think that there is a chance in hell that Oklahoma State wins this game. And I know they found their way into the Big 12 championship. I get that. I'm going to give Mike Gundy his flowers. He's done a good job this season.
They stunk at the first of the year. They
did. And then who'd they get blown out by just recently? UCF blew them out a couple of weeks ago.
Stunk
UCF
again.
did.
Yeah.
They're playing Texas. I mean, as much as I agree with you, I want Texas and OU out of the conference also. I get all of that. I can't make that bet on principle. The Longhorns are going to blow out Oklahoma State.
All right.
Just absolutely going to blow them out. So I'm going to take Texas minus 15.5. And I'm actually going to pull a phrase that you use quite a bit. I think Texas covers this at halftime, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Jacob is also with me, Paul. You get another island here.
I got
with Oklahoma State.
I've got one good island. I've got one bad island that was emotional. And so I'm at a war. I win one, I lose one.
Knowing you, though, Paul, something weird is going to happen and you're going to win that. And this is the way that things happen to go for you all the time.
That would be the one game you won't mind me winning, because we don't want Texas walking away with a Big 12 champion. So it's okay with you if I win it, and I get it. That's the one time in this season we'll say that.
I will say that and we're going to talk about this later in the show, part of the reason why as much as I don't want Texas to win for the Big 12, if Texas does win, then that could very easily create some controversy when it comes to the CFP.
It could.
And which teams are going to be getting in. So that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on as well. And another game that will be monumental potentially as it comes to the selection of the top 4 teams in the playoff, the SEC championship. We're going to move to that game in Atlanta tomorrow afternoon. Alabama, 5.5-point underdogs against the number 1 team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs. Paul, what do you like in this game?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm torn. Both these teams, both of them could win this game. We both know that. They're both talented teams. Alabama's had a problem or two as we've seen this season develop. But Georgia is just so darn good. I mean, they are just solid in everything. They're defending champions. They're undefeated. They probably stay undefeated. The question is, will that score be within the 5.5 points? I say it probably won't be. I think there's more potential for Georgia to win and win a little bit larger than Alabama to even cover. I'm going to take Georgia, although this is a flip of the coin. Both these teams are good. Both of these teams are capable of winning a national championship, but I'm going to take Georgia.
Look, I've been a Georgia believer all season long. When people were saying that they're not beating teams the way that a number 1 team should beat teams, I was just like, look, keep an eye on them. They're rounding into form. Kirby Smart is great. He's going to get things rocking and rolling, and he did. And they stayed at number 1, and they have handily beat teams over the last several weeks. That being said, though, Nick Saban is angry. Nick Saban, I saw an interview with him with Pat McAfee the other day where he talked about the potential of the SEC not having a team in the 4-team CFP if Alabama wins.
There's a potential.
And he's talking about how that's ridiculous and how there should be representation. Clearly, it should be his team. I'm all about chaos and anarchy. I want to see Alabama beat Georgia because I want to see the 4-team CFP be blown up.
Attaboy.
And it's I want to watch that controversy. So because of that, I'm going to take Alabama to cover 5.5. I want to see Alabama win the game, to be honest with you, but I'm going to take the Crimson Tide plus 5.5. And actually, Paul, I get an island here because Jacob's joining you. He's saying Georgia will win by 5.5. So I will take that island in the SEC championship game, and I need him considering how far behind I am, the two of you guys. Let's move to the ACC championship game. Florida State, they are 1.5-point favorites over Louisville. Florida State, obviously, without Jordan Travis, their dynamic quarterback who's out for the entire season. That's why the line is kind of where it's at right now. Do you think Florida State can still cover 1.5, or is Louisville too tough, considering that Florida State does not have their star quarterback?
Well, Louisville's not a bad football team, but you know, when Florida State lost their quarterback, you know, they dropped a spot in the CPF and all these other things, and we see that a lot of people were starting to write them off. This kid seems to be good. He's obviously at Florida State on a football scholarship. You know, he's going to have some upside and some skills. And he's proven that it looks like he's going to be an adequate quarterback. I don't think that's enough. I mean, Florida State plays defense really well. I think they will defend Louisville. I think Florida State's overall speed will be enough. I'm going to go ahead and give the 1.5, and I'm going to take Florida State. I don't know if that's right. This is the one game I don't know how this thing goes, but I'm going to take Florida State.
You know, Louisville is a good team, right?
Good
Jeff
team.
Brougham is the head coach there, and he's done phenomenal things for Louisville, and they're, you know, a top 15 team right now. Here's the issue, though, and I've gone back and forth on this a lot. Jordan Travis, phenomenal. He was a phenomenal quarterback for the Seminoles. Of course, went down with that devastating leg injury.
That's right.
He's done for the year. But Florida State, they did not get to where they are right now as an undefeated team solely based on Jordan Travis. They've got a ton of other phenomenal players. You mentioned their defense is great. It's a clear drop-off, you know, when you don't have a potential Heisman guy on the field in Jordan Travis. But he's not the only player on the team. I'm kind of leaning your way, Paul. I think Florida State still covers that 1.5. And also, I also want to pick this because I want Florida State to win, because I want to see the drama with the CFP. You've got an undefeated Seminoles team. If they win the ACC without their star quarterback, what does the committee do? Do they put a Jordan Travis less team into the CFP? I don't know if you can do that or not. I want to see the Seminoles win. I'll lay the 1.5. And actually, Jacob gets an island on this because he's taking Louisville to cover the 1.5. So that's where that stands for that game. The final game in our college slate will be the Big Ten championship game tomorrow night. You've got the Iowa Hawkeyes as 22.5-point underdogs taking on Michigan. Jim Harbaugh is back for the Wolverines on the sideline. Is there any chance in your mind that Iowa can cover this 22.5?
Did you know Iowa won 10 games this year?
They did.
I mean, that might be the most silent 10-game football team. That when you hear talk about good football teams, how come I never hear anything about them? You know what I know?
Because they don't score.
Yeah,
they don't.
But that's right. And they don't have great receivers. And I get that. And they drop a lot of passes. We know what that feels like if you're a Chiefs fan. But a 10-win football team, they're getting no love whatsoever. But they're still and Coach French is still the head coach of that football team. He's a good coach. But with that being said, Michigan's damn good. So you know something? I think, golly, 22.5. You know, man, I'm torn. Okay, I'm going to go with Michigan. I'm taking Michigan. I don't know why, but they don't cover at half. How about that, Tommy?
Well, make no mistake about it. Michigan will win the game.
That's right, probably.
With Jim Harbaugh back, Michigan will be in the CFP. They could very well be the number 1 team if Georgia loses, right? I don't think that they take that risk with Iowa. I think that Michigan wins. But keep in mind, Paul, Michigan, and Chelsea Messenger said this yesterday on the show, Michigan could win by a final score of 21-0 and not cover. Right? It's
true.
22.5.
That's
Iowa
lot.
doesn't score. Iowa doesn't score, but they've got that hard-nosed Big Ten defense. Kirk Ferentz is awesome. Just his philosophy and things, the way that program is built. I mean, a punt is basically a score for them. Like, it's crazy. And they find their way into the Big Ten championship game. Honestly, I'm kind of leaning Iowa to cover. Make no mistake, Michigan wins. I think Iowa can cover the game. They may kick a field goal. I mean, it might be like a 24-3 win for Michigan, but I think the Hawkeyes cover that number. And I get another island here. Jacob is taking Michigan. So you and Jacob are on the same page there.
That's good island
with the Big Ten champion.
No. I was torn. I was torn. I can't make fun of that pick. I almost made it myself, Tommy, so it's okay.
I'll take that island for sure.
I know you will.
And then, I mean, I'm all about chaos and controversy going into the 4-team committee. So I don't think there's any chance that Iowa wins the game. But man, if they did, can you imagine? Like, just imagine what would happen if Oklahoma State wins, if Alabama wins, if Louisville wins, if Iowa wins. Like that, it's going to be wild. We'll talk about it in our next segment, some of the decisions that are looming for the committee in the college football playoff. Let's switch over to the NFL, Paul. We've got a really good slate of games this weekend. The Texans and the Broncos. That game is in Houston. The Broncos are a really hot team right now in the NFL, but honestly, so are the Texans, and CJ Stroud is looking fantastic. Houston is a 3-point home favorite. What do you like?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's hard not to take the Broncos. I mean, this is it's kind of a fairy book tale with these guys. I mean, they started out the year. This was the team we thought was going to stink, didn't we? I mean, I thought, they'll be lucky to win 3-4 games in the entire NFL season. And now look at them. They're a team to reckon with, which just goes to show you that coaching is important. Even in the NFL, coaching is important. I'm going to take the Broncos just because it's a feel-good story, and I love Colorado, and they're my number 3 team in the NFL. I'm taking the Broncos.
Well, Jacob is with you. He's taking the Broncos as well as 3-point road underdogs. Basically, it's a toss-up game, considering that 3 points is kind of the home field advantage for Houston. I'm going to go with the Texans. I'm going to take that island also with Houston. I'm a believer in CJ Stroud. And I know that, the hopes were not incredibly high this season with a brand new head coach and DeMeco Ryans, a brand new quarterback and CJ Stroud. But man, all they've done is just put up points and put up points and put up points with guys that have really blossomed and jumped into the picture, like Tank Dell and Nico Collins and, some of the receivers that CJ Stroud has. It's incredible. And I'm not taking anything away from the Broncos. What Sean Payton and Russell Wilson have done recently, they're a really, really hot team. They've established the run a little bit more. Russell is playing better. But man, I'm going to take Houston, and I'm going to lay that 3 at home. I think that Houston can not only win, but I think they'll win by more than a field goal. Let's move on to the next game in the NFL. You've got the Miami Dolphins on the road taking on the Washington Commanders. The Commanders are 9.5-point home underdogs. The Dolphins are kind of up and down, right? Like they're beating teams that are bad. They're losing to teams that are good. But then you've got the Commanders who are finding themselves behind both the Cowboys and the Eagles in the NFC East. What do you think about this one?
Well, I like the Dolphins a lot. We've talked about the overall speed of this team, and we've come to the conclusion that it's got to be one of the top 2 or 3 teams with overall speed, and speed kills. Commanders haven't been covering. If I'm not mistaken, they've not been covering. They've been a dog a couple of times, at least 2 or 3 times in the last 4 or 5 months or 4 or 5 weeks, and they're not covering. They're not doing a great job of covering. Although 9.5 points, Tommy, that's a lot of points. That's a lot to cover. I'm going to go ahead and take the Dolphins. I think they cover. I think they cover fairly easy, but it's still going to be a struggle. I don't have any faith in the Commanders. I can't take them, even if it was 12.5 points. I don't have faith in their ability to score. I'm going to take the Dolphins.
The Commanders are in desperation mode right now.
That's right,
and Ron Rivera should be in desperation mode too, because he may lose his job. Washington has lost 3 in a row. They fell to the Seahawks, the Giants, which is surprising, and then they got blown out on Thanksgiving by the Cowboys, 45-10. It's desperation time for the Commanders. I don't think they win. I think that they lose 4 in a row, and Ron Rivera probably is out of a job. But I think I'm going to take Washington to cover the 9.5. That's a lot of points.
Wow.
The Dolphins, they haven't beaten anybody great. I think that, again, they'll win. But I'm not sure that they're going to win by that margin. Right. I'm going to take the Commanders plus 9.5. And Jacob, again, is with you. He's taking the Dolphins. So I will take another island with the Commanders.
My God. You've already got 4 islands.
I've got 4 islands so far. I kind of need it. I'm far behind. I got to catch up a little bit. I'm not confident in that pick because the Dolphins are head and shoulders better than the Commanders, but that's kind of a big number. So I'm okay with it. I'll take the Commanders at plus 9.5. Let's move on to another matchup here On the West Coast, you've got the Browns headed to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. The Browns without Deshaun Watson for the rest of the year. I don't know what they're going to be doing at quarterback. I don't know the status of Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the rookie coming out of UCLA. He was in concussion protocol earlier this week. The Browns are 3.5-point road dogs at the Rams. What do you think about this one?
Well, I think that part of this is with traveling doesn't make it any better. You go to Los Angeles. It's one of those things. I'm just going to go ahead and take the Rams. I don't have any faith in the Browns. I think they have a focus problem. I think they have problems with getting everything put together. Who's what, who's where, injuries, that kind of thing. You lose your number one quarterback, it affects everybody. I'm going to go ahead and take the Rams, but I'm not confident about it. But I'm going to go ahead and take the Rams.
It looks like, and I don't know if they've made anything official yet, but it looks like Joe Flacco, the veteran,
for God's
has
sakes,
been taking
you're not buying
first-team
that.
reps this week.
You are not buying that, are you? I mean, for God's sakes, the guy's, 55, something like that. I mean, come on. You're not buying, are you? Are you really buying that?
Hey, Joe Flacco's a Super Bowl winner, Paul.
Well,
he's a Super Bowl champion,
Super
right?
Bowl 4, something like that. 5, I don't know what it was, but anyway, come on now. You can't be serious. That is as much hype as anything.
No, I'm not buying that.
No.
I'm not going to buy that at all.
Good.
Flacco, I don't know if Flacco's going to start or if it's going to be DTR. I'm not sure they've made an announcement on that yet, or at least I have not seen that. But man, the Browns have a really good defense, and Myles Garrett is great. I got to take the Rams here. I cannot in good faith.
I got you.
Take that island. Jacob is also taking the Rams.
Yeah.
That's a clean sweep.
Yeah.
The Rams at home.
Makes sense.
-3.5.
That's right.
All right, let's go to probably the most
man.
marquee matchup, I would say, of the entire Sunday football slate. The San Francisco 49ers, 3-point road favorites on the road, taking on the 10-1 Philadelphia Eagles. Paul, for the life of me, I cannot figure out why Philadelphia just does not get love. They're at home, and they're home underdogs, and they're 10-1. Can you make sense of that?
No, and not only that, you have maybe the top favorite for the NFL MVP. You've got at least number 1 or 2. I mean, there maybe somebody else has. But anyway, this is a team that, you're right, doesn't get any respect. But the 49ers are also one of those teams that's pretty darn good. I'll tell you what, the winner of this game very easily could be in the Super Bowl. Very easily be in the Super Bowl. I like the 49ers because I think they have more weapons. I like Brock Purdy. He's coming along. He's going to be a really good quarterback. I like the ability of the 49ers to run the football with Caffrey. And I think that the 49ers win this game. I wish, Tommy, that it was 2 points instead of 3 points. I wish the 49ers were giving 2, not 3. But with that being said, I'm going to take the 49ers. I think they're on a team that's playing as consistent as a lot of teams. I'm going to go ahead and take the 49ers. Not confident about it. I think this is a toss of a coin. And I could see you going with the Eagles. I can see you going with the 49ers. There's no wrong answer here because they got to play the game to get this thing settled.
Well, the Niners are on a 3-game winning streak. They blew out the Jaguars. They beat the Buccaneers by basically 2 touchdowns, 13-point win for the Niners. And then, of course, the Thanksgiving night game against the Seahawks beat them 31-13. So they're hot right now. They're healthy for the most part. Deebo Samuel has looked great in his return. Bringing back Trent Williams has been really essential for the offense for the 49ers. But again, I just don't understand why the Eagles are not getting love at home. They have the best record in the NFL. And again, I understand how good the 49ers are. I think we're going to see this rematch in the NFC Championship game. There's no doubt about that in my mind. I mean, the Cowboys might have something to say about that, but really, I think it's those two teams are at the top, and they're the class of the NFC. Right. It's going to be it's the biggest game probably of the season so far, I would say. But man, if you're going to give me the best team in the NFL with the best record, and you're going to give me 3 points at home, I'm going to take Philly. I'm going to take Philly plus 3.
Of course you are. Of course.
And Jacob is taking the 49ers with you. I mean, come on.
Jacob, what are you doing?
That's the best island I've ever had. There's not a better island out there.
You've got 5 islands, and almost all of them are good. All of them are, well, other than the Commanders and the Dolphins. I don't know about that one. But right now you've got Alabama, you've got Louisville's. No, that's Jacob. You've got Iowa,
Alabama, Iowa.
That's
the
22
Texans,
and a half.
The Commanders and
Yeah.
the Eagles.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, you've got some darn good islands. You know, you could win this real easy, or you could be embarrassed real easy.
I'm going all in. Like it's time to shine.
You are
in this. We've got one more game to
all
pick
right.
before we take a break. It's Sunday Night Football. The Kansas City Chiefs at Lambeau, going to Green Bay to take on the Packers. The Chiefs are 6-point road favorites. I think that I'll give you my pick here in a second, but man, there's something about this game I don't like, and I'll talk about it here in a minute. But what do you think?
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to use the phrase that the Chiefs probably cover by halftime, and it's only 6 points, so they'll be up by 7, 14-7, whatever the case is. Chiefs cover it pretty easily, even though it could be problems with the weather. I don't know what the weather's going to be at Lambeau, but I'm going to take the Chiefs. They've just got way too much firepower. Their defense will be better. I'm going to go ahead and take the Chiefs. Obviously.
Yeah, Jacob is with you. He thinks the Chiefs cover easy. It's within that touchdown.
And so are you.
So all the Chiefs have to do is win by a touchdown. Wait
a second. 6 islands.
Think
about that for a minute. 6 islands.
The first quarter against the Raiders was not good. First quarter and a half to be exact.
No, I would say that.
And then Kansas City flipped a switch,
right.
And that was vintage Kansas City in the second half of that game against Vegas. Something about this game seems kind of trappy to me. I don't know. Jordan Love is playing better. The Packers are playing better.
Jordan Love should be MVP, Tommy. I would take the Packers.
I don't think it should be.
Well, and their
I don't
defense,
think it should be.
They're going to be. It's a great defense. It's wonderful.
You're trying to bait me. You are trying to bait me right now into taking the Packers. I'm not going to take the bait. And we're going to make it a clean sweep.
All right,
I'm going to say the Chiefs -6. It's within that touchdown.
Okay.
If it was 7.5, I don't know if I could do it, but it's within that touchdown. I will take Kansas City at -6. We will make that a clean sweep. We'll see how it goes. It's going to be a wild weekend in both college football and the NFL. I'm so excited about the conference championships starting tonight with the Pac-12 and then into tomorrow. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Paul, let's talk about that CFP. Let's talk about some of the wild scenarios that could be in place. We will do that on the other side. Tommy Castor, Paul Savage, Jad Chambers producing. It's Sports Daily on KFH, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. It's Sports Daily on a Friday here on KFH. Tommy Castor, Paul Savage, Jad Chambers producing the show. The IHOP hotline is open at 869-1240. Paul, let's get into some of these wild scenarios that could potentially be in place after the college football championship games tomorrow. I think the committee, depending on the way that some of these games play out, the committee is going to have a wild time figuring out who the top 4 teams are.
Well, there's no question. We can't even figure it out. And there's so many variables. And there's a number of teams that if they lose, they will still have a chance to get in. For instance, Georgia and Alabama. But you can't even say that Georgia and Alabama are guaranteed a spot, particularly if Georgia loses. There's a lot of scenarios going on. If somebody beats somebody else, and there's how many teams will have one loss. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. For instance, because Alabama has beaten Georgia in the playoffs, Texas also won against the University of Alabama by what? Double digits, if I'm not mistaken. My memory serves me right. It was a beatdown to a certain extent, at least for Alabama. That would be perceived as a beatdown. But there's so many scenarios, Tommy. But I got a question for you. I've been wanting to ask you this the whole show, and I get the chance to do this. Is the SEC owed something that no matter what the scenario is, Alabama or Georgia needs to be in the Final Four just because they're from the SEC? And the SEC has won, 6 of the last 9 national championships. They've won, I think, the last 2, if I'm not mistaken. But they have been so dominant. They're such a powerful conference. And ask anybody in America if they follow college football at all, no matter what their allegiance are. You say, what is the best conference in America? If they say any other league other than the SEC, then they're lying to you, or they don't know what they're talking about. Tommy, does one of those 2 teams get in no matter what the scenario works out?
Do they? I think yes, but do they deserve, or are they owed something? No.
Okay.
I really don't think that's the case. But I do think
that's what I was asking.
I do think one of them ultimately will end up in the CFP. There's only been 1 year since the CFP started, the 4-team playoff, that an SEC team has not been in. Only 1 year.
Do you have that in front of you? What year? I'm just curious.
I'd have to look that up.
Okay, never mind. Never mind. Okay, I was just curious. Okay.
I just know that from the inception of the CFP, there's only been 1 year that the SEC has not been represented in that. I don't think that they're just by default, because they're an SEC team, that they're deserving of being in, like having a representative in the 4-team conference. That's ludicrous. And look, there are a number of scenarios that can play out, and it could very well be a moot point come Monday, right? Like Georgia could beat Alabama and be the clear-cut number 1.
No question.
But at that point, if Alabama wins, does Georgia drop all the way out? Does Alabama try to find a way in? They're competing against Texas for a spot, but Texas beat them. Then there are some other teams that might be on the outside looking in. Ohio State is one of them that's potentially on the outside looking in. What if Florida State wins the game without Jordan Travis? Are you going to sit here and tell me that Florida State without Jordan Travis, even though they're undefeated, is better than another team that's on the outside looking in?
I got your
should
point.
they leapfrog Florida State, or should it be about their overall body of work, not about what the team looks like right now? It's crazy. And like, they're going to be wild decisions potentially that the committee's going to have to make.
Now, there are some scenarios that are incredible for some of these teams, and they're not going to get in because of what it takes to get in. Let me throw you an example, if you don't mind. Let's look at Ohio State. It's crazy what has to happen for them to get in. Now, can they get in? Yes, they can get in. But here's what needs to happen this weekend. Georgia needs to beat Alabama. Michigan beats Iowa. Washington beats Oregon. Louisville beats Florida State. Oklahoma State beat Texas. Guess what? If those 5 things happen this weekend, Ohio State's in the Final Four. I mean, some of these are just incredible. I mean, that's the way it is. For instance, with Texas, let's say Texas beats Oklahoma State. Georgia's got to beat Alabama. Louisville has to beat Florida State. Otherwise, there's no chance. And that's sort of the way it is with it's nuts. It's crazy. Yeah. But some of these scenarios are going to happen, but there are teams with better chances of getting in than others. For instance, I guess I like Texas' chances as well as anybody to get in because of what has to happen. 2 things have to happen besides them beating Oklahoma State. That goes without saying. But, there's a lot of teams, several of these teams that got just huge things that have to happen, and it's almost impossible. For instance, Alabama. If Alabama beats Georgia, they get in. If Alabama loses, they're done. There's no chance.
Do you think if Alabama beats Georgia, they get in? I mean, that's going to be that's the difficult thing, right?
If Alabama beats Georgia, they can still get in with a loss.
They can. And the question is, does Georgia fall all the way out of the 4 if they lose to Alabama? They're number 1 right now. I think
there's no chance Alabama gets in. No chance unless they beat Georgia. They get in. I believe they get in if they beat Georgia. But if they don't beat Georgia, there is zero zip nada chance they get into the playoffs.
And look, I think that you can probably pencil in the winner of tonight's Pac-12 championship game, whether it's Washington or Oregon. Washington wins, they're in. Oregon wins, they probably leapfrog Washington and they get in. So I think that that's probably likely. The wild card is Florida State and what the committee does with Florida State if they beat Louisville tomorrow. Like, if I'm the committee, I want Louisville to win so badly if I'm the committee, because then it would be so easy to drop Florida State out.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about those questions about how do the Seminoles get in without their starting quarterback? And, if they're the number 4 seed, more than likely they're going to get blown out by the number 1, and there might be a more deserving team for that number 4 spot. If I'm the committee, I want Louisville to win so badly tomorrow. So that's really the wild card. I think Michigan is pretty much guaranteed a spot. They're not going to lose to Iowa. We talked about that in the last segment. So those 2 spots, the one for the actual championship game,
right,
and then Michigan, are pretty solid right now. It's those other 2 spots.
Right.
If Georgia wins, they're locked into number 1. And then you basically got, at that point, 1 spot remaining, and that's Florida State.
Right.
If all those teams that are currently in the top 4 win tonight or tomorrow, it's going to be those top 4, right? If there's any kind of screwy things that happen, man, like, all bets are off and it's going to be chaos. And I think that, like, honestly, and Jacob and I have talked about this before, Paul, it's another great example of why we got to move to the 12 team. And I know that we are, and I know that it's, right around the corner.
Can't wait.
But, rather than, because regardless of what happens, there's going to be conversation next week about who didn't get in and who was deserving and who should have been in and who shouldn't have made it and all of that. You're going to have that regardless, even if there's a 12 team, but at least you're not talking about one of the top teams in America when you're having that conversation.
That is correct. By the way, get back to Florida real quick. The predictions from USA Today. are simply this: Florida State gets in with a win over Florida. They're in. They're going to be in. There's no way they are not in. But if the Seminoles lose to Louisville, they'll be a one-loss team. No chance, according to USA Today.
Yep,
No chance. No chance.
If
No
Florida
chance
State
they get
loses, if they lose to Louisville, they're out. It's not happening for them.
It's not going to happen.
All the teams currently on the outside looking in are wanting chaos. They're wanting Alabama to beat Georgia, and they are wanting Louisville to beat Florida State. I mean, they would love Iowa to beat Michigan. That's not going to happen though. But Texas and Alabama, like they're going to want these other teams to be able to come in and have chaos. And that's very well what we could be looking at on Monday. It's going to be wild. I'm going to be so locked in to these games starting tonight and into tomorrow. This is maybe the most excited I've been for a conference championship slate of games in college football in a long time. It's going to be so much fun. I'm almost more excited about this than I think I will be about the actual CFP. It's going to be incredible. And it starts tonight with the Pac-12 game between Washington and Oregon. Kickoff for that game will be on ABC if you want to watch it on TV. When we come back, our final full segment, let's dive in very briefly to the Chiefs in primetime, taking on the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau. We'll talk about that next on Sports Daily. Welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. By the way, Chiefs games are available live for free over on KNSS and on the free Odyssey app. Tune into KNSS Sunday night for NFL action, the Chiefs on the road in Green Bay, or simply download the Odyssey app and search for KNSS at kickoff. Paul, let's talk a little bit about that game in our final full segment. We have a couple of minutes remaining. We talked about it in our Friday football picks. Chiefs on the road at Lambeau, taking on a Packers team. They're 5-6 right now. They're trying to battle for a wild card spot in the NFC. I don't think they're going to win the division with the Lions and the Vikings in front of them. But Jordan Love has been playing better. Kansas City had a great second half against the Raiders. I'm wondering, though, I mean, it's a primetime game. We've seen the Chiefs play down to their competition before. What do you think the Chiefs have to avoid in this game? And, if they want to be able to have a really solid showing.
How about that for being succinct, huh? Drop passes. If you can cut those out, you will solve a lot of your problems, because Patrick Mahomes will put the ball, for the most part, where it needs to be caught. And that's the one thing. And by the way, it's not just the drop pass. You lose a first down, or maybe you have to punt, or whatever the case may be, or maybe it takes the score away. It's demoralizing. That's part of the problem with the Chiefs right now. When those drop passes happen, it affects everybody. It's, not again. So drop passes for me is the number one thing. I don't think I've ever said that on the radio in my entire life. What do you got to do to avoid getting beat? That's catch everything. How about that? That's a first for me, but I think that might be the key. That will not demoralize this football team if they catch everything.
They've got to lean on Rashee Rice like they did in the second half last week. That's going to be, he's the wide receiver one outside of Travis Kelce on this team. But even to that point, he had a couple of drop passes in the game against the Raiders. So, the athleticism he has and the way that, he's able to pull away the yards after catch and all of that Rashee Rice has, he's building that trust with Patrick Mahomes. He's just got to make sure that it's a consistent 4 quarters of action.
I'll buy that.
And I know that, that they're not going to have McCole Hardman. He's on injured reserve. Kadarius, don't know if we know his status for sure this weekend, but I mentioned it on Monday's show, Paul, that I think a big beneficiary and a big reason why the Chiefs won the game because of McCole Hardman and Kadarius Toney not in the game was Rashee Rice. It forced the Kansas City offense to lean on him. They're going to have to do that consistently as the rest of the season if they want to be considered a Super Bowl favorite.
But that's possible. It's totally possible. I think that, in fact, it's probably likely gives you another set of weapons to be able to be used the way they're using him. And I think that's exactly possible. It just makes this team stronger and stronger. And I'm with you. But, these are the kind of games that you look at and you think, well, the Chiefs are going to win this game. But it is the NFL. The Packers pay players too. To play. They're good players. We'll just see what happens. But you just look overall in this game, and you can set a scenario where you're going to get probably better pass rush with the Chiefs. You're going to get better linebacker play with the Chiefs. You'll probably get coverage advantages that the Chiefs have over the Packers. Up and down the scales, you look at this, quarterback play will be better. Receiver play, maybe not as good as the Packers. I don't know. I'm still transitioning to where these guys are. I don't know. But there's all kinds of advantages that the Chiefs have physically and as a football team over the Packers. So you just got to go. You can't drop these kind of games if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. You can't lose to a 6-6 football team.
Well, we'll give you a couple of quick injury updates. And we mentioned McCole Hardman. He's on injured reserve, had surgery earlier this week. Jerick McKinnon did not practice on Wednesday. He was out of the game last week and didn't play. So I think that it would be a stretch to say that he'll play on Sunday night. Nick Bolton is the question. He got some work in this week. He's off IR. I don't know if he's going to be ready to go for Sunday night's game or not. The Chiefs defense has played really well without him. I can only imagine what it's going to look like when he's back. Guys like Drew Tranquill and Leo Chenal, they've stepped up in the absence of Nick Bolton, but surely having him back, and I don't know if he's going to be able to play this weekend or not. I know he got some practice in, but he'll be a big addition to the Chiefs defense if and when he'll be ready to play. So, one other thing about the Packers, Paul, I mentioned it before, Jordan Love is improving. I mean, he's looking like the guy that the Packers want under center. And so the Chiefs are going to have to do a good job of containing him.
I think that's a good point. I wouldn't have said that 5-6 weeks ago, but you're right. He is getting better, and it's noticeable. And that's part of the reason this team is 6-6 and not, say, 4-8. That's part of the reason.
Well, it's a primetime game inside Lambeau Field. It's always fun when the Chiefs go to Green Bay. And, of course, you can hear it on Sunday night over on KNSS. We'll take our final break of the show. When we come back, we'll tell you what's on tap on Sports Daily. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for us. Let's run through what's on tap today. Jim Rome follows us at 11, Bob and Jeff at 2, Zach Gelb at 4, the Jerome Tang radio show tonight on KFH at 7 o'clock. Tomorrow, K-State basketball takes on North Alabama. You can hear all the coverage with Wyatt Thompson beginning at noon right here on KFH. Butler basketball on KNSS with Dennis Higgins at 3:45 tomorrow afternoon. On Sunday, Shocker men's basketball at Missouri. You can hear the coverage with Mike Kennedy on KEYN. And then Sunday night football, the Chiefs at the Packers. You can hear Mitch Holthus on KNSS and the National Westwood One broadcast right here on KFH. A busy weekend. Paul, enjoyed it as always. Have a great weekend.
Friend, have a great one yourself.
All right, for Jad Chambers and Paul Savage, I'm Tommy Castor. We'll see you back here on Monday.